My name is Elaine Porter, and I buried my husband twice. The first time I buried his body. The second, I buried the truth. My own sons tried to kill. They thought I was too old, too weak, too broken to fight back. But they forgot one thing. Mothers never die quietly. Snow never fell in Seattle, only rain that glowed like liquid glass. The city's skyline shimmered behind the cemetery, neon veins pulsing through fog. Elaine Porter stood alone beneath her black umbrella, her reflection fractured on the marble slab that bore her husband's name, Thomas Porter, 1957-2025. She couldn't cry anymore. The rain had already done it for her. Each drop hit the coffin with a sound too precise, too final. Beside her, Adrian checked his smartwatch, pretending it was grief. Miles whispered to someone on the phone behind his sleeve. Their black coats were immaculate, but their eyes, flat metallic, never met hers. When the pastor closed his book, Elaine's phone vibrated in her purse. The sound didn't belong here among prayers and lilies. She glanced at the screen. Unknown number. One message. I'm alive. That's not me in the casket. For a second the world tilted. The headstones blurred into the gray skyline. Her heart beat so hard it almost drowned out the rain. She typed back with trembling fingers. Who is this? The reply came before she could breathe. Don't trust our sons. They're watching. She dropped the phone. The vibration echoed against the wet grass. Adrian looked up, expression controlled. Mom, you okay? Elaine forced a smile that hurt her cheeks. Just, the rain, she whispered. But deep inside, something colder than the storm took root. Thomas hated technology. He barely used a phone. So how could he text her from the grave? The neon signs from the distant skyline bled into the puddles, red and blue like police lights. Somewhere out there, a secret was waiting to be uncovered, and tonight, the rain was only beginning. The rain followed her home. It dripped from her umbrella, leaving ghostly trails across the hardwood floor. The house, once alive with Thomas's jazz records and the smell of roasted coffee, now felt like a museum after hours too clean, too quiet, too empty. Elaine set her purse on the kitchen counter and stared at the framed photo on the wall, the four of them smiling on a sunny pier, Thomas's arm slung across her shoulder. I'm alive. The words flashed again in her mind like lightning behind clouds. Mom Adrian's voice broke the silence. He stood at the doorway, still in his funeral suit tie, loosened just enough to look casual. Miles and I talked to the insurance adjuster. We'll handle everything, okay? You don't need to worry about the paperwork. Elaine nodded, her eyes on the floor. That's thoughtful. Miles entered behind him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. You need to rest. We've got the house, the bills, everything's under control. His smile was too easy, his tone rehearsed. Under control, she murmured. Your father hasn't even. We just want to help. Adrian cut in quickly, eyes sharp. Dad would have wanted that. The air grew thick. Lightning illuminated the room, catching the edge of a stainless steel knife on the counter. Elaine's reflection looked back at her, older, thinner, but alert now. She forced another weak smile. Thank you, boys. I'll call if I need anything. They left soon after, their voices fading into the sound of the rain. Alone again, Elaine reached for her phone, scrolling to the message thread. Still there. No new texts. A gust of wind rattled the kitchen window, and in that flicker of light, she swore she saw a shadow move outside, standing still beneath the dripping eaves. Morning came gray and restless. Elaine walked through Pike Street with her coat pulled tight, rain dripping from the awning signs like thin silver wires. The Harbor Bean Cafe glowed dimly at the corner, the same place Thomas used to stop before heading to his workshop. Inside, the smell of espresso and wet wool wrapped around her like a ghost. Behind the counter, Joy looked up, brown curls, damp eyes, kind but startled. Mrs. Porter, I'm so sorry about Mr. Thomas. He was always so sweet. Elaine forced a smile. Joy, the morning before the accident, did he come here? Joy hesitated, glancing at the other customers. Yeah. He ordered his usual black roast, but he didn't drink it here. Said Miles was waiting outside in the truck. Did Miles buy something? No, ma'am. Just stood by the door. Oh, she frowned, remembering. That day I smelled something strange. Like nail polish remover, you know. I thought maybe the machine was leaking, but... Her voice trailed off. Elaine's pulse quickened. Methanol. She didn't say it out loud. Instead, she whispered, "Do you still have that paper cup?" Joy blinked. I keep old cups for recycling art. It might still be in the back." Minutes later, Joy handed her a crumpled to-go cup with Tom P. written in blue ink. The plastic lid was still sealed. Elaine's fingers trembled as she slipped it into her purse. "Thank you, Joy. You've done more than you know." When she stepped outside, the rain had turned heavier. She climbed into her car, breath fogging the windshield. In the rearview mirror, through streaks of water, she caught a flash of movement. A black sedan, engine idling, following her. The wipers beat a frantic rhythm as Elaine drove through the soaked streets. In the rearview mirror, the black sedan kept its distance, but never disappeared. By the time she turned into her quiet neighborhood, the car had vanished, swallowed by the rain. Or waiting. Inside the house, the air felt heavier than before. She turned on every light. The framed photos of her family seemed to watch her, their smiles too still, too rehearsed. Elaine sat at the kitchen table spreading the accident paperwork Adrian had left behind. Her hands froze. The report listed explosion damage at the workshop, but the attached photo showed a spotless room. No soot, no burns, not even a scratch on the concrete. She leaned closer. The signature at the bottom, Thomas Porter, was shaky, uneven wrong. Her heart pounded. Who signed this? The phone vibrated. Unknown number. Again. Go to the storage, Unit 107, before they erase it. She read it twice, whispering, "Erase what?" But before she could text back, the message disappeared. Not deleted, recalled. Rain thundered harder. The refrigerator hummed like a warning. From the window, she saw headlights sweep past the street, pause, then fade. Someone was still out there. Elaine packed a flashlight, her phone, and the to-go cup into her purse. She hesitated at the door, staring at the umbrella stand, Thomas's old cane leaning beside it. She grabbed it too. "Okay, Tom," she whispered. "If you're still here, lead me." The clock struck midnight. She locked the door behind her, stepped into the wet darkness, and started the engine. The rain blurred everything except her fear. Ahead, the sign for Rainier Storage glowed faintly like an omen. The Rainier Storage sign flickered above her like a dying pulse. Midnight rain hissed against the metal doors, each drop echoing in the hollow corridor. Elaine's shoes splashed through puddles as she searched the numbers painted on the units 103, 105, 107. Her fingers trembled on the cold lock. The padlock clicked open with a sound that felt too loud. Inside, the light switch sparked weakly before a dim bulb buzzed to life, casting everything in sepia gloom. Cardboard boxes stacked neatly to the ceiling, each labeled in Thomas's handwriting. Receipts, shop records, tax 2022. On one shelf sat a small silver device, dusty square with a red record light. A VoIP call recorder. Elaine knelt, heart hammering. She pressed play. A hiss of static filled the air. Then Thomas's voice, warm, calm, terrifyingly alive. "If you're hearing this, Ellie, they've already tried. Adrian and Miles have been talking about insurance, about what would happen if I die." I pretended not to notice, but tonight I saw Miles pour something into my coffee. He said it was vitamin powder. It smelled wrong. Elaine covered her mouth. Tears blurred her vision. "If they hurt me, don't confront them alone. Find Simon Grady. He knows. And Ellie, whatever happens, don't drink anything they hand you." Static swallowed his last words. Elaine stared at the recorder, her breath coming in broken gasps. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to run. But another sound froze her, a soft metallic clang outside like a boot brushing a ladder. She turned off the light. Darkness swallowed the room. Only the red LED from the recorder pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Someone was walking down the corridor, water dripping from a coat. She pressed herself behind a stack of boxes, pulse pounding so loud she feared they'd hear it. Through the crack of the half-closed door, she saw a silhouette, tall male holding a flashlight. The beam swept across the floor, stopping right at her unit. The lock she'd opened clinked softly against the doorframe. The man's light hesitated there. Elaine gripped Thomas's old cane tighter, her knuckles white. Then a voice, low, calm, practiced. "Mrs. Porter," the stranger said. "You shouldn't be here this late." She recognized it instantly, Simon Grady. But before she could step out, Headlights flared through the far window, slicing through the rain. Another car had pulled in. Tires screeched. Simon's expression shifted from calm to alarm. They found us. Move. Elaine grabbed the recorder, clutched it to her chest, and followed him into the storm. Behind them, a storage door slammed open with metallic violence. Somewhere in the maze of rain and steel, her sons had arrived early. They didn't stop running until they reached the cafe. The neon Harbor Bean sign still glowed through the rain like a tired heartbeat. Simon ushered Elaine inside, locking the door behind them. The smell of old espresso and damp coats filled the air. Elaine collapsed into a chair, clutching the recorder. Thomas mentioned you," he said. "Find Simon Grady." Simon nodded, water dripping from his trench coat. "He came to me 3 weeks ago, said he felt watched. He didn't want to scare you until he had proof." Elaine's throat tightened. "Proof of what your son?" Simon said quietly. He suspected they'd tampered with his medication, and that they were planning something bigger, life insurance fraud, maybe worse. Elaine stared at the rain streaking the window. "He knew, and he didn't tell me." "He was trying to protect you," Simon said gently. "He thought if you knew they'd see it in your eyes." He pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket, damp but sealed. "He gave me this for you. Told me to wait until I was sure he was gone." Elaine opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a folded note in Thomas's handwriting. "Ellie, if anything happens, don't lose yourself to fear. Truth hides in details, paper trails, passwords, small mistakes. Trust Simon, and stay alive for me." Her tears dropped onto the ink, smearing the word alive. Simon looked toward the street. Headlights flared in the distance, too slow to be passing cars. "We can't stay long. Whoever followed you to the storage knows I exist now." Elaine tightened her grip on the recorder. "Then tell me everything, Mr. Grady. All of it." He hesitated, voice lowering. "That recording you found? It's only the first file. There's a second one, but it's been encrypted, stored remotely, and only one person can unlock it." Elaine frowned. "Who?" Simon met her eyes. "Your husband left the access key on one of your son's devices." Outside, thunder rolled over the city, neon light bleeding down the glass like tears. Morning broke gray and unforgiving. Elaine wore Thomas's old raincoat and walked through the hospital doors with a calmness she didn't feel. The sterile air smelled of bleach and secrets. Her heart thudded with every step toward the records office. "I'd like to see my husband's file," she said to the woman behind the counter, a young administrator with a plastic smile and eyes that didn't quite meet hers. "Of course," the woman replied. "Name Thomas Porter." The woman typed, frowned, then glanced at someone behind her. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but those documents have already been retrieved by family." Elaine blinked. "I am his family." The smile didn't move. "I mean, other family members. Your son Adrian signed the release yesterday." The world tilted slightly. "He what standard procedure, Mrs. Porter?" "He said you weren't feeling well enough to handle paperwork." A low rage burned through the grief. "Bring me the authorization form," Elaine said quietly. "Now." The woman hesitated, then disappeared into the back room. Simon, sitting nearby with a newspaper raised to hide his face, tapped the side of his glasses, tiny camera lens recording everything. Minutes later, the woman returned, pale. "It's gone," she murmured. "The form, someone took it from the archive this morning." Simon rose, his calm voice slicing the tension. "We'll take that as confirmation." He flashed a quick badge. "Private investigator." The woman froze. Elaine leaned across the counter, her voice trembling but sharp. "My husband didn't die in an accident, and you just helped cover it up." The woman's composure cracked. "Please, I was told to cooperate. They said it was a legal transfer. I didn't know." "Who told you?" Simon asked. She swallowed hard. "Mr. Adrian Porter. He said it was confidential." The fluorescent lights flickered. Somewhere down the hall, a gurney squeaked. Elaine looked at Simon, her voice breaking. "He stole his own father's death file." Simon nodded grimly. "Which means he's hiding what really killed him." Outside, the rain had started again, steady, cold, relentless. The truth, it seemed, was just as unstoppable. The sky over Seattle was the color of bruised steel. Simon's sedan rumbled through the rain-slick streets toward his office, a narrow second-floor suite above a pawnshop that smelled faintly of coffee and gun oil. Elaine followed him upstairs, soaked to the bone, clutching her purse like armor. Simon plugged a small drive into his monitor. This came from a friend on the docks, he said. Traffic cam caught Miles's truck crossing Ballard Bridge the night before the so-called explosion. The screen flickered to life. Grainy footage, windshield wipers sweeping back and forth, headlights reflected on the wet metal rails. Inside the cab, Miles sat hunched, glancing nervously at something on the passenger seat. Simon froze the frame, zoomed in. A cardboard box with a red sticker, Industrial Solvent Supplement Batch de 24M. Elaine's breath caught. That label. I've seen it. He keeps bottles like that in our garage. Said it was protein mix for his gym. Simon exhaled slowly. That's methanol base. A few ounces mixed into coffee would mimic a stroke or heart attack. Fast, untraceable. Rain hammered the windows like fists. Elaine stared at the screen, her voice barely a whisper. My sons killed their father. Simon's jaw clenched. We don't say it, we prove it. That video's enough to open a preliminary case, but we'll need the full chain purchase record residue test and motive link. He copied the file to a portable drive, slipped it into an envelope, and handed it to her. Keep this safe. If something happens to me, go straight to Detective Whitman at SPD. A loud crash startled them both, the sound of metal twisting somewhere below. Simon darted to the window. Stay here. Down on the street, a dark figure was moving fast toward Elaine's car. The man's hood glistened with rain, his gloved hand pried at the garage side door. Elaine's pulse spiked. That's my house he's breaking in. They bolted down the stairs. Simon's car skidded across slick asphalt tires, slicing puddles into silver fans. As they turned onto her street, Elaine's heart dropped. The garage light was on. The door hung half open, one hinge broken. Simon drew his flashlight. Stay behind me. Inside, the air reeked of damp concrete and something chemical. Thomas's old tools lay scattered on the floor. On the workbench, the cardboard boxes marked Supplement sat open empty. Elaine stepped closer, her reflection shivering in a spill of clear liquid. They cleaned it out, she whispered. Every bottle's gone. Simon crouched beside a muddy footprint. He wasn't here to steal. He was here to erase. The fluorescent bulb flickered twice, then died, plunging the garage into a shadowed blue from the streetlights outside. Simon Elaine whispered, Look. A fresh photo lay on the workbench. It showed her taken from across the street, standing in her kitchen window the night before. She covered her mouth. They're watching me. Simon pocketed the photo, his voice razor steady. Then they know we have evidence. From now on, you're not staying here. Thunder rolled overhead as they stepped back into the rain. Elaine glanced once more at the broken door, water running down her face, like tears. Somewhere in that darkness, her sons were already one step ahead. Simon's office was dark, except for the blue glow of his monitor and the faint hum of the rain outside. Elaine sat wrapped in an old gray blanket, her hair still damp, eyes fixed on the flickering screen as Simon typed line after line of code. He murmured, Thomas was careful. He used a private cloud backup. If he wrote anything after he got suspicious, it'll be here. A progress bar crawled across the screen. Finally, a folder appeared. Personal drafts, not sent. Simon opened the newest file. The subject line read, Meeting, Riverside Diner. The email was dated 2 days before his death. Adrian insists we meet at Riverside tomorrow morning. Says it's about future finances, but he keeps asking about my coffee routine, what time, what blend. It's strange. I want to believe he just worries, but lately his eyes don't look like a son's. They look like a man calculating risk. Elaine's breath caught. He wrote that the day before Simon clicked another file. To myself? If anything happens, it's not an accident. Check the insurance increase form. Adrian brought it to me. Miles signed as witness. Something about it feels staged. Elaine whispered, he knew. Simon nodded grimly. And now we have proof he feared them before the incident. The police can't ignore that. He started encrypting the files into a new drive. The hum of the rain softened for a second. It almost felt safe. Then the office lights flickered. Once, twice. Simon frowned. That's odd, power grid stable here. Elaine looked up from the screen. You think? Before she could finish, a small red dot danced across the window blinds like the aim of a laser pointer. Simon moved fast, slamming the lights off, pulling her down. The glass shattered as a bullet punched through the frame, scattering shards across the desk. They lay still, hearts pounding. as the echo of the shot faded into the storm. Simon whispered, "They're not just watching anymore. They're cleaning house." They ran through the back stairwell, feet splashing through puddles of rain that had leaked down from the roof. The stairwell smelled of rust and fear. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, but not for them, not yet. Simon led Elaine across the empty street toward an underground parking structure. "Down here," he hissed. The gate was half open, creaking in the wind. They ducked inside, swallowed by concrete shadows. The air was cold, metallic, echoing. Simon crouched beside a rusted sedan and opened his laptop, connecting the external drive they'd salvaged. "There's one more file I haven't played," he said. "It's called Voicemail Draft 2. I think Thomas tried to record it before he lost consciousness." Elaine's hands trembled. "Play it." Static. Then Thomas's voice, weak, breathless, but undeniably him. "Ellie, something's wrong. My coffee smells sweet. Can't see. Dizzy. Miles said it's new supplement. Please don't." The recording ended in a scrape and a thud. Elaine pressed her palms over her face, sobbing silently. Simon rewound it, adjusting the gain. "Listen." In the background, the faint sound of a television filtered through the murmur of an ad jingle. Simon increased the volume. Elaine froze. "That's our living room TV. That's our morning news channel." Simon's eyes narrowed. "Then he wasn't at the workshop when it happened." "No." Elaine shook her head slowly. "He was home." Which meant the explosion story was a fabrication. He'd been poisoned in his own kitchen. Simon leaned against the wall, thinking fast. They moved his body, made it look like a work accident. And they had access to the house Miles lived 2 blocks away. Elaine's voice broke. "They killed him here, Simon, in our home." Before he could answer, an engine roared at the far end of the garage. Headlights flared, blinding white. A car was speeding straight toward them. "Run!" Simon yanked her toward the side ramp. Tires screeched as the car fishtailed, clipping a pillar. The driver's window rolled down just long enough for a flash of a gun barrel to catch the light. The shot echoed. A spark bit into the concrete inches from Elaine's shoulder. Simon fired back 2 warning shots that shattered a headlight. "Keep moving." They ducked behind a support column as the car reversed violently, bumper scraping the wall. The driver's face flashed in the half-light. Miles, rain-soaked, frantic eyes wide with fury. "Mom, you shouldn't have snooped," he screamed through the window. Elaine's heart shattered. That voice, her little boy's voice, now twisted into something unrecognizable. "Miles, stop," she cried, stepping out just enough for him to see her. "Please don't do this." For a split second, his hands shook on the steering wheel. But then he gunned the engine. Simon fired again. Tires burst, glass exploded. The car slammed sideways into a pillar, smoke curling from the hood. Miles crawled out, dazed but alive, stumbling into the shadows before Simon could reach him. The echo of his footsteps vanished into the rain. Elaine sank to her knees, sobbing. Simon crouched beside her, voice steady, despite his heavy breathing. "He's scared now." "That's good. Fear makes people sloppy. We'll use it." He helped her up, guiding her toward the stairwell. "We go to the police now. But first I need that residue sample from your house. It'll tie the poison to him." Elaine wiped her tears, trembling but resolute. "Then we end this. For Thomas." As they emerged from the parking ramp, dawn was bleeding pale light over Seattle's skyline. The rain had slowed, but the storm inside her had just begun. The neighborhood was still half asleep when Elaine and Simon pulled into the driveway. The rain had eased to a mist, wrapping the street in a ghostly hush. Elaine's porch light flickered weakly. She hadn't left it on. Simon drew his gun before they stepped inside. The front door hung slightly open, the lock twisted wood, splintered. Elaine's pulse quickened. "They've been here," she whispered. The living room was a crime scene of silence. Drawers pulled open, cushions torn apart, photo frames smashed. Her world, 40 years of family life, lay in pieces on the floor. On the coffee table sat a single photo. It had once been their family portrait, Thomas, with his arm around her, Adrian and Miles on either side. Now it was ripped clean down the middle, separating the parents from the sons. Across the torn edges, written in thick, dripping red marker, "Stop digging, Mom." Elaine's hand trembled as she touched the ink. It was still wet. Simon scanned the room, voice low. "They were here minutes ago. Maybe still close." Elaine turned toward the kitchen. The smell hit her before she saw it, chemical sharp familiar. The same scent Joy had mentioned. On the counter sat a half-empty bottle labeled Supplement B24. Simon slipped on gloves, collecting it into an evidence bag. This ties directly to the dashcam box. Methanol compound, no doubt. Elaine's knees weakened. She leaned on the counter where Thomas used to stand every morning, humming to the radio. "They did it right here," she whispered. "Right here in our kitchen." Simon's voice softened. "We'll make them answer for it. But we need to move. If Miles came once, he could come back." Elaine nodded numbly, eyes on the photo. The bright smiles now fractured forever. As they stepped outside, a faint engine revved from down the street. A black sedan idled for just a second before vanishing around the corner. Simon guided her to the car. "No more warnings, Elaine." This was a message and a confession. Thunder rolled faintly over the sound as she looked back one last time at the house that was no longer hers. Only the red words remained bleeding through the glass like a wound. Simon's tires hissed across the slick asphalt as they reached a low brick building by the waterfront, the private forensics lab he trusted. The air inside smelled of ethanol and metal. A single fluorescent light buzzed overhead while a young technician accepted the sealed bottle. "Test for methanol concentration," Simon ordered. "Full tox scan. Rush it." The technician nodded and disappeared into the back room. Elaine sat on a metal stool staring at the rain streaking the small square window. "I can't believe it," she whispered. "My boys." The same hands that used to build toy planes with their father now mix poison. Simon leaned against the counter. Grief makes monsters of some, but this was greed. Cold math. Minutes dragged into hours until the tech returned pale. "It's pure methanol, sir. No additives. Industrial grade." Elaine's stomach turned. "So it's true." "More than true," Simon said grimly. "It's deliberate." As he sealed the evidence back into a case, Elaine's phone began to vibrate. Unknown number again. She hesitated, then answered. A voice cracked through the line, shaky, breathless. "Mom." "It's Adrian." Elaine froze. "Adrian, where are you? Listen to me." Miles lost control. "He's blaming me. He thinks I told someone. He said he's going to finish what we started. Please, Mom, I didn't mean for any of this." The line erupted in static, then cut to silence. Elaine gripped the phone tighter. "He's scared, Simon. Miles is turning on him." Simon's expression darkened. "That means one thing, they know we're closing in." He pocketed the methanol sample and nodded toward the door. "We'll go to my office, send everything straight to SPD servers. Once this evidence is logged, they can't touch it." But as they turned onto Pioneer Avenue, a smell hit them, burning rubber smoke, something chemical. Simon slammed the brakes. Flames glowed ahead, orange against the wet night. His office. The entire second floor was an inferno. Paper drifted down like ash, glowing red at the edges. Elaine gasped, clutching her chest. "Simon, your evidence." He jumped out of the car, shouting orders to bystanders already calling 911. The fire roared, devouring everything. When he returned to the car, his face was streaked with soot. The recordings, the drives, all gone. Elaine whispered, "Then we've lost." Simon shook his head. "No. We still have the methanol bottle and the truth. They can burn paper, but not guilt." The building groaned as its roof began to collapse, flames reflected in the rain pooling on the street. Elaine turned away, tears and smoke mixing on her face. From the shadows across the road, unseen behind a row of parked cars, a pair of headlights blinked once, then went dark. Someone was watching. Again. The motel was the kind that smelled of wet carpet and cigarettes, long extinguished. Neon light from the sign outside flickered through the blinds, striping the room in red and shadow. Elaine sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in Simon's coat, her face pale in the half-light. Simon plugged his laptop into the motel TV. "The fire wasn't random," he said. "There's surveillance from the pawn shop across the street." He hit play. Grainy footage filled the screen, midnight rain reflections of fire trucks in puddles. Then two figures appeared in the alley an hour before the blaze. Both wore hoods, one tall, lean, the other broader, slower. Simon froze the frame. Enhanced lighting. The software sharpened the pixels just enough to reveal their faces. Elaine gasped. "Miles." Her voice trembled. Then her eyes widened. And Adrian? Simon nodded grimly. Your elder son unlocked the door. Miles carried the accelerant. They didn't argue, they coordinated. Elaine pressed a hand to her chest. But Adrian called me. He said he was afraid. That Miles. Simon turned to her, voice low. It was a diversion, Elaine. He wanted you off guard. Make you trust him again. She shook her head, tears cutting through the soot on her face. No. Adrian wouldn't. He was always the gentle one. Simon's tone softened but didn't waver. He's the strategist. Miles acts Adrian plans. Thomas suspected it too. That's why he wrote both their names on the insurance note. Elaine looked at the paused screen again. Two silhouettes drenched in rainlight, stepping back from the first flickers of flame. Her sons. Her babies. Her voice broke into a whisper. They're destroying everything their father built. Simon put a hand on her shoulder. Then we rebuild with truth. But we move now, before they find us. Outside, thunder rolled low over the horizon. Elaine glanced through the blinds. 2 cars idled across the street, engines faintly humming. They already have, she said softly. The neon vacancy sign blinked twice, then went dark. The rain came harder than ever that night, drumming against the tin roof like bullets from the sky. The motel lights buzzed, then flickered out. The room sank into shadow. Elaine sat frozen, her hand hovering over the bedside lamp, listening. Then she heard it, tires on gravel. 2 engines. Headlights cut through the darkness and spilled across the thin curtains. Simon was already up, gun drawn, checking the window. They found us, he whispered. Elaine's breath caught. How they traced your phone. The sound of car doors slamming. Boots splashing in puddles. Voices, her son's voices, distorted by rain, but unmistakable. Check the back first. She won't run far. Simon pulled Elaine toward the bathroom. Out the window go. She hesitated. You'll be right behind me. He gave a faint smile. Always. The first shot shattered the front window. Shards of glass rained across the bedspread. Simon fired twice in return, covering her escape. The deafening echo filled the small room with smoke and panic. Elaine crawled through the back window into the storm landing in the mud behind the motel. Her knees burned, but she didn't stop. Simon, she called. Another gunshot cracked through the night, closer this time. Simon stumbled out of the doorway, clutching his shoulder, dark blood blooming beneath his coat. Go, he gasped. They'll circle around. She grabbed his arm, half dragging him toward the storage shed behind the motel. Rain soaked them both, thunder swallowing every word. Inside, the air was heavy with gasoline and dust. Simon slumped against a crate, pale but conscious. Press here, he said, guiding her hand to his wound. We can't stay. Through the slats of the wooden wall, headlights swept the yard. Adrian's voice rang out, calm but cold. Mom, please, come out. We can still fix this. Elaine froze. His voice wasn't angry. It was desperate, manipulative, the same tone he'd used as a boy when he'd broken something and begged her not to tell Thomas. Fix this, she shouted back, her voice cracking. You already did, Adrian. You fixed your father's death. A pause. Then Adrian's voice trembling. You don't understand. He was going to cut us off. We had nothing, Simon whispered. Keep him talking. As he fumbled with his phone, sending a silent ping to the SPD contact, Elaine stepped into the rain, lightning flashing across her face. You had everything. A father who loved you, a home. A name. You killed him for money. From behind the truck. Miles appeared, eyes wild, gun shaking in his hand. We didn't mean. Don't, Adrian barked. Put it down. But it was too late. The chaos cracked like thunder. Miles fired, missing Elaine by inches. Simon returned a single shot. Miles spun, collapsing into the mud. Adrian screamed, rushing to his brother's side. Miles, stay with me. Elaine trembled, her face streaked with rain and tears. You did this, Adrian. You turned your family into ashes. For the first time, his mask cracked. Adrian's voice broke, raw and broken. You think this was about money? You never looked at me. Mom, it was always him. Police sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder. Simon exhaled, hand shaking on his gun. It's over. Adrian looked up through the rain hollow, furious, defeated, and whispered, No, it's just beginning. Then he ran. Elaine fell to her knees beside Simon as blue lights flashed through the sheets of rain. The nightmare was breaking, but the storm wasn't done. Blue and red lights painted the rain-slick parking lot in a trembling glow. Paramedics swarmed the scene, voices sharp and urgent. Elaine stood in the mud, soaked and shivering, her mind a blur of sirens and sobs. Miles lay on a stretcher, oxygen mask fogging with every broken breath. His face, pale and streaked with rain, looked suddenly young again. The boy who once built model planes with his father. Elaine stepped closer, ignoring the officer's gentle hand, trying to hold her back. "Miles," she whispered. His eyes fluttered open. For a moment he seemed to see her, truly see her. His lips trembled beneath the mask. "It wasn't supposed to be him," he rasped. He switched the cups. Her blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" Miles coughed, blood on his teeth. "It was for you." The monitor flatlined. A paramedic shouted for adrenaline. Elaine staggered backward, her hands over her mouth, the words echoing in her skull. "It was for you." Simon, pale and bandaged, sat on the tailgate of an ambulance, nearby, his shirt soaked crimson, but his eyes still sharp. "They planned 2 doses," he murmured. "Your husband drank the wrong one." Elaine sank onto the curb, rain dripping from her hair. "They were trying to kill me." Simon nodded quietly. "And when he realized Thomas tried to warn you." The hospital corridor later that night felt sterile, infinite. Elaine sat in a thin blanket, giving her statement to a weary detective. Her voice barely held steady through the details. When she finally stopped, the detective hesitated before speaking. "Mrs. Porter, there's something you need to know. We have Miles's body, but Adrian's gone." Elaine blinked, disbelief cutting through exhaustion. "Gone." "He escaped the perimeter before backup arrived. We found his car abandoned near the docks." The detective placed a plastic bag on the table, inside a blood-stained photograph of Elaine and Thomas. Across it, smeared in red ink, 3 words: "See you soon." Elaine stared at it in silence. Outside, thunder rolled again over the sound, like the promise of another reckoning still to come. The night wind at the pier cut through Elaine's coat like a blade. The rain had stopped, but fog rolled thick off Puget Sound, swallowing the old wooden docks where Thomas used to take the boys fishing. The water slapped rhythmically against the pylons, slow, cold, merciless. Simon's car idled behind her, headlights dimmed. He sat inside, still recovering, pistol resting on his lap. "Stay in sight," he said through the cracked window. "If he shows, I'll move in." Elaine nodded and walked forward alone. Her shoes creaked over the soaked planks, every step echoing in the emptiness. She clutched the recorder in one hand, the folded letter from Thomas in the other. At the far end of the dock, a figure emerged from the mist. Adrian. His clothes were wet and wrinkled, his eyes hollow-rimmed red. He looked less like a man and more like a memory that refused to die. "Mom," he said softly, "you shouldn't have come." Elaine's voice shook, but she didn't waver. "Where else would I go? This is where you grew up, where your father taught you to tie your first fishing knot. Now it's where you're hiding from his ghost." Adrian gave a bitter laugh. "Ghosts? You made those, Mom. You always chose him. Always looked at me like I was half the man he was." Tears welled in her eyes. "Because he was half the man you could have been if you hadn't let greed rot your soul." He stepped closer, the wood groaning beneath his boots. "You don't know what it's like to watch your father treat you like an inconvenience, to scrape for attention while he praised Miles for every mistake." Elaine lifted the recorder. "Then why kill him? Why poison him over the coffee he made for you?" Adrian froze. His jaw clenched. He wasn't supposed to drink it. Her hand trembled. He switched the cups. His silence was the answer. Elaine pressed play. Thomas's weak voice filled the fog again. "Ellie, my coffee. Can't see." Adrian's composure cracked. He turned away, hands gripping his head. "I didn't mean for him to die. It was just supposed to scare him. Make him give us control." "Control." Elaine's voice rose, fury shaking it. "You murdered your father and burned his memory to hide your guilt. And now you want me to forgive you." Adrian spun toward her, tears and rain indistinguishable on his face. "You think this is easy for me?" "No," she said, stepping closer, holding Thomas's letter out to him. "But doing the right thing never was for you." He looked at the paper, his father's last words trembling, as if it were burning his hands. Then his eyes flicked past her, toward Simon's headlights. Panic crossed his face. Police, he hissed. Simon, she said quietly. He's here to keep you from running again. Adrian's hand darted into his jacket. Simon shouted from behind, Don't. The sound split the air like lightning. A gunshot. Then another. Adrian staggered backward, clutching his side, his pistol clattering into the water. The fog carried the echo away, leaving only the sound of waves. Elaine caught him before he fell. His blood stained her hands hot and bright against the cold night. Mom? Adrian's breath rattled. Tell him. I didn't mean to. She held him as his body went still, the pier groaning under their weight. You already told him, she whispered. He heard you. The fog thickened, swallowing the dawn. Simon stepped forward, holstering his gun, eyes heavy with sorrow. It's over, Elaine. No, she said softly, staring into the dark water where the gun had vanished. It's finally true. The fog began to thin as the first light of dawn broke over the sound. Police cars lined the dock, their lights muted now, flashing gently against the gray water. The world was quiet, too quiet for all that had been lost. Elaine sat at the edge of the pier wrapped in a blanket, her hair tangled, her hands still stained with her son's blood. The sea breeze carried the faint scent of salt and smoke. Beside her, Simon stood with his arm in a sling, watching the detectives take notes and photograph the scene. Adrian Porter, age 35. One officer murmured to another. Gunshot, wound to the abdomen, died instantly. Elaine didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the ripples where the gun had sunk, the place where her last child had fallen. A young officer approached gently. Ma'am, is there anyone we can call for you? She shook her head. No one left to call. Her voice was calm, almost too calm, like someone who had cried every tear possible. The officer hesitated, then placed something on the bench beside her, a folded blood-speckled envelope. We found this in his pocket. Elaine's breath caught. Her name was written across it, in Adrian's familiar handwriting. She opened it slowly. Inside was Thomas's old letter, stained and half-torn, but one line remained untouched. If truth ever finds you, let it set you free. Her tears came silently this time, falling onto the paper. She looked toward the horizon, a pale gold bleeding through the mist. Simon crouched beside her. You did what he couldn't, he said softly. You brought the truth home. Elaine managed a faint, exhausted smile. Truth doesn't bring peace, Simon. It just makes room for it. She folded the letter carefully, pressing it to her heart. The morning sun broke fully now, scattering the last of the fog. The pier glistened like glass, washed clean by night's sorrow. For the first time in years, Elaine felt her shoulders ease, not from joy, but release. She whispered into the wind, You can rest now, Thomas. And somewhere between the waves and the light, it almost felt like he answered. 2 months later, the old Porter house stood silent beneath the pale Seattle sky. The garden was overgrown, the porch still scarred from the night of the break-in. Elaine walked through the empty rooms one last time, her fingertips brushing the faded wallpaper. Each corner carried an echo, laughter, arguments, lullabies, ghosts of a life that no longer fit inside her chest. Simon waited by the doorway, his arm still stiff from the wound, but healing. You're sure about this? He asked. Elaine nodded. This house raised a family. And buried it. It's time it gave someone else a chance. Outside, a young couple waited with their realtor, nervous and hopeful. Elaine smiled faintly as she handed over the keys. The husband's eyes reminded her of Thomas, kind, hard-working, unaware of tragedy yet to come. Later that week, at a modest community center downtown, a small crowd gathered under a new sign, the Thomas Porter Foundation for Families. Betrayed by blood but saved by truth, Elaine stood at the podium, voice steady, eyes shining. This fund isn't born from anger, she said. It's born from a promise that no one should suffer in silence when love turns cruel. Reporters snapped photos. Volunteers applauded. Simon stood at the back, hands in his pockets, watching quietly as she spoke, proud, protective, and a little in awe. When the ceremony ended, he joined her on the steps outside. The late afternoon light bathed the city in gold. You did it, he said. You turned tragedy into something that breathes. Elaine smiled softly. No, we did. Thomas planted the seed, you helped me find the soil. I just watered it with what was left of my tears. Simon chuckled under his breath. You're stronger than you think, Elaine. She looked out at the skyline, the wind lifting her silver hair. Strength isn't what you're born with, Simon. It's what you build when there's nothing left to hold. The bell of St. Mary's rang in the distance, 1, 2, 3 chimes, as the sun dipped low, painting the sound in amber. And for the first time, Elaine didn't feel haunted. She felt home. The evening light poured gently through the lace curtains, turning Elaine's kitchen into a painting of peace. A kettle hissed on the stove, the faint scent of chamomile filling the air. Simon sat across from her coat, draped over the chair, their teacups steaming between them. You know, he said with a soft grin, for someone who claims to be retired, you've built a foundation busier than half the charities downtown. Elaine smiled, a quiet warmth in her eyes. Work keeps the ghosts away. Or keeps them close, he said, his gaze kind. They fell into comfortable silence, the clock ticking steady and kind. For the first time in months, she felt safe, truly safe. When Simon stood to leave, she walked him to the door, the air outside cool and still. Drive safe, she said, her voice tender. He smiled, tipping his hat slightly. You too, ma'am. When the sound of his car faded down the street, Elaine turned back toward the porch. That's when she saw it, a plain brown envelope resting neatly against the welcome mat. No postage, no return address. Just her name handwritten in neat, deliberate script. Her heartbeat quickened. She hesitated before picking it up, the paper damp from the night air. Inside was a single glossy photograph. The image froze her breath. Adrian standing on the same pier where she had last held him, his face bruised but alive, eyes turned toward the horizon. The timestamp at the bottom corner read 4 days ago. The cup in her hand shattered against the floor. Her trembling fingers traced the faint outline of her son's figure. The fog behind him, the angle of the light, it was unmistakably real. Not an old shot, not a trick. She staggered back, gripping the edge of the table. No, he was gone. I felt him go. But the photograph whispered otherwise. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of the sound. In the distance, a car door closed, soft, deliberate. Elaine turned toward the window, her reflection overlapping the photo in her hand. Her whisper was barely audible. Thomas. What if the truth isn't finished with us yet? The next morning, Elaine stood outside Simon's office, the photograph clutched tightly in her trembling hands. The city was still wet from last night's rain, reflections of morning light trembling across the glass doors. When she entered, Simon looked up from a pile of reports and froze when he saw her face. You didn't sleep, he said quietly. She placed the photo on his desk. Simon. He's alive. He leaned closer, eyes narrowing. Where did you get this? Someone left it at my door. No note, no message. Just this. Simon studied the timestamp, his expression tightening. 4 days ago. Same pier. He looked up at her. That's not an accident, Elaine. Someone wants you to know. Before she could answer, his assistant knocked and stepped in holding a tablet. Sir, you need to see this. The foundation's bank account just logged an anonymous transfer. $200,000 wired at 3 a.m. Elaine's breath caught. From who? No name, the assistant replied. Just a tagline in the note field. She turned the screen around. In bold type, it read, For the woman who finally told the truth. Elaine stared at it, her pulse pounding in her ears. That's his handwriting. Simon frowned, typing rapidly into his computer. I'll trace the routing source. His fingers stopped mid-motion. The color drained from his face. The IP address. It's bouncing through offshore servers. Someone built a whole shadow network for this. And look here. He turned the screen toward her. Security footage from the foundation's main entrance flickered static. Then a brief image of a man in a dark coat standing outside at dawn, his face half hidden by the brim of a hat. Elaine stepped closer. The moment the man turned, her knees nearly gave out. That's him, she whispered. Adrian. Simon's jaw tightened. He's watching. Maybe he's protecting you. Or maybe he's planning something worse. Outside the office window, thunder rolled again, though the sky was clear. Elaine looked at the photograph still lying between them. He's not done with us, Simon. Simon's eyes met hers, calm but cold. Then we'll be ready when he comes. The cemetery was quiet that morning, washed in the silver light of early spring. Dew clung to the grass like tiny beads of glass. Elaine walked slowly along the path, the air carrying the faint scent of sea salt from the sound beyond. It had been 1 week since the photograph, and she hadn't slept a full night since. The world saw her as a survivor now, founder, widow, hero. But inside she still felt like a woman listening for footsteps that never stopped echoing. She carried a bouquet of white tulips, Thomas's favorite, wrapped in plain paper. When she reached his grave, she stopped cold. Someone had already been there. Lying across the marble headstone was a bouquet of blue anemones, freshly cut, their petals still beaded with morning dew. Elaine's hands trembled. The last time she had seen those flowers was years ago on their 25th anniversary. Adrian had picked them himself from the bluff behind their home, saying Dad likes how they face the wind. Her breath caught. She knelt beside the grave, brushing the petals with her fingers. Tucked beneath the ribbon was a folded piece of paper. She unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was unmistakable, deliberate, clean, every curve a ghost of her son's voice. "The truth never dies, Mom. It just changes shape. You did what you had to. So did I." The paper slipped from her fingers, the words blurring as tears welled in her eyes. She looked around the quiet expanse of graves, the long shadows of the oaks. There was no one, yet she could feel it. A presence. Watching. "Adrian," she whispered into the stillness. "What have you done?" A crow landed on a nearby cross, cawing once before taking flight toward the trees. Simon's voice echoed faintly in her memory. "Maybe he's protecting you. Or maybe he's planning something worse." Elaine folded the note carefully, tucking it into her coat pocket. Her heart was steady now, frightened, yes, but also resolute. "You can't run forever," she murmured. "The truth follows all of us." As she turned to leave, a soft crunch of gravel sounded behind her. She froze. Slowly she looked over her shoulder. At the far edge of the cemetery near the wrought iron gates, a man in a dark coat stood beneath the trees. The wind tugged at his collar, his face obscured by shadow. He wasn't moving, only watching. Her breath caught, but she didn't run. She met the shadow's gaze across the distance, the silence between them thick as fog. For a fleeting second, she thought she saw it, a flicker of familiar eyes. Then the figure turned and disappeared into the morning mist. Elaine stood there for a long time, the anemones at her feet swaying gently in the wind. The sun broke through the clouds, lighting the words carved into the headstone. "Thomas Porter, beloved husband, betrayed father, man of truth." She knelt once more and placed her tulips beside the blue flowers. "Rest, my love," she whispered. "The truth still walks the earth, but I'll keep it safe." Behind her, the waves of Puget Sound crashed faintly against the distant shore, steady, endless, unbroken. As she walked away, her coat billowed in the wind like a flag of surrender and defiance all at once. Somewhere in the mist, unseen, a camera shutter clicked once and was gone. How did this story touch you? Tell us in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10. If it moved your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Tap this so you won't miss our next emotional story. And before you go, click on the end screen to discover more powerful, heartwarming tales waiting just for you. See you in the next story.